How about a sound check on Zoom? Can you hear me? All right, great. Thank you. So we're going to start with this chant on page 30 of our chant books here in the room, and I posted it in the chat here for everybody. Let me copy it in case you just came in. This is a loving kindness chant. It's nice to just bring the intention of goodwill to our heart. As we say the words, we can just have this intention to be kind, right? And to really to invite all aspects of kindness into our heart. So, and traditionally there are these 4 kinds of kindness: this basic friendliness towards life, this non-contentious attitude or emotion that we might have, and then this compassionate heart that connects with the truth of suffering and the truth of life, right? And then this 3rd aspect of kindness, which is, hi Jimmy, which is the heart that is kind and feels delighted when there's joy, right? Especially delights in another's joy. And then the 4th kind of kindness is this aspect of kindness that brings the wisdom to understand, like, oh, it's really like this, even in hard moments, which allows us to stand up in the middle and find courage to be in life as it is. Okay. So these 4 aspects of kindness that or loving kindness that we're chanting. So we'll begin on page 30. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a mind imbued with compassion. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a mind imbued with gladness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with the mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a mind imbued with equanimity, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with the mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. Just inviting all the energies of the body and mind to settle. This isn't a demand. More of a loving intention, an invitation, and really an invitation to be simple. Setting aside all of the mind's proliferations, all of the problems to solve and our long to-do list. We're getting intimate with what it's like to be a human being in a very ordinary way. I have a body and it feels like this. There's no right way to feel into the body. The body will make itself known. Perhaps we feel temperature or pressure. We might feel movement. Or anything else. Body becomes obvious because of this intention to care, to be simple. There's nothing we have to do to make the body better or different. We're just allowing the body to be our teacher. Accepting the body on the body's terms. Remembering that the body's nature a result of a variety of conditions coming together, causes and conditions. The breath is the way it is because of conditions, not because it's a personal problem. The breath is short, the breath is short. If the breath is long, the breath is long. What a relief it is not to have to solve anything. Just like we would care about any living thing, can have an attitude, a heart of kindness, meet this body with an intention to be kind, to be present, to listen, to learn. Not hold on, allowing the body to be what the body is, and that's always in motion. Everything is always changing. No sense in trying to control the uncontrollable, but just receive and respond with care. As we continue to learn to be right here with our bodies, we can experiment with the most appropriate response. How do I care about this? What's the most skillful way to participate with this experience, this sensation? Of course, there will be resistance to being present, all kinds of dodges, thoughts that pull us away. It doesn't have to be a problem either, it's to be expected. In the most loving way, we just remember to value intimacy. You remember that everything happens right here. Our whole life can only be known through the body. So we lovingly return and feel and respond, participate with care. Let's continue in silence now. a minute to stretch your legs if you'd like. Good to be here with you all. My name is Shelly Graf. I'm one of the guiding teachers here at Common Ground. I'm filling in for Mark this morning while he's away teaching at the Forest Refuge at IMS in Barre, Massachusetts. He'll be back sometime. Well, he'll be here next week on the screen, I believe. I lead the Wednesday night practice group. It's still online only, and we've been working our way through the Noble Eightfold Path and following this wonderful little book by Bhikkhu Bodhi that you can find online if you go to the calendar and look under Wednesday night if you want to take a look at it yourself. So I thought I'd share some reflections this morning on the second path factor, which is wise intention. Wise intention. We'll go back a little bit further before wise intention to begin with a little foundation. It's good to remember that, often we make this mistake. We imagine the problems in our life and we think that they're external. Right? And this even, it's embarrassing how often I make this mistake as a very serious and long-term Buddhist practitioner. I think, well, if this were better, then I'd be happier, or we'd be better off, or something like that. And although it's always useful to imagine and to actually participate skillfully in life, because there's no getting around that. We're always participating, even in our, what we think is non-participation is a kind of participation, right? It's also useful not to forget what the Buddha's central inquiry was, and that's to move the attention to the internal and see how suffering is created here in the heart, regardless of our external experiences, right? That's how we learn how to live the lives that we want to live in the midst of intense and challenging experiences. We learn to be courageous because we somehow reckon with this inquiry ourselves, right? And the Buddha, when he left the palace, you imagine a palace, he had all the privileges you could imagine. He left all of those because there was something nagging, like this isn't enough, right? This isn't doing it. And so there was that inquiry that led him to go and seek a deeper understanding. Like, what is suffering, right? And is there some way to experience relief even when the realities of life exist as they will? Like the body is always aging. One teacher said, as soon as we're born, we're meandering towards our death, right? And it's true, but we don't remember that all the time, right? Until we do. And then it's shocking, or there's a health issue or crisis, and if the last 3 years have taught us anything, we've learned something about both the resiliency of the body, the vitality of the body, and also the fragility of human experience. And so it helps me to remember that practice can be really simple. Even though it feels like our lives are very complex, that can be true too. But the simplicity of practice is that we're always returning to this inquiry that the Buddha had himself. What is suffering? How do I feel that? How do I know it? Is there some way to participate skillfully with this experience or with life so that it doesn't so that I'm not perpetuating my own challenges, right? So I'm not contributing to more suffering, so that I'm actually contributing to a heart that can feel and be free in the midst of anything. A tall order indeed, right? a tall order. So in this central and very important teaching, the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha laid out his understanding here, right, that he came to in these four basic ways. Like, suffering exists. It's a very pragmatic stance. Like, it's morning-ish out there and it's fall. Like, that's just a very direct, hard to argue with statement, right? Suffering exists is kind of like that. So it's like, we're going to experience suffering. If we try to transcend it or keep getting away from it, we find ourselves in this common predicament where we're just chasing the next pleasant experience or trying to avoid anything that's difficult. So there has to be something more than that, right? So this understanding, like, oh, this is suffering or suffering exists, helps us learn how to get close to it and learn to use it as a teacher, right? And so that's the first noble truth, this pragmatic statement. And the second noble truth is this statement that we can understand something. Suffering can be a teacher, right? We can, if we get close to those, even those minor tightnesses in the heart, right? Those kind of compelling things that we maybe try to avoid, like, this doesn't feel quite right, I don't feel good right now. Is there some internal angst? We turn on Netflix or go to the refrigerator or distract ourselves generally. But instead, we can learn to turn towards that and get curious about it. Like, oh, what is this all about? And in the second noble truth, the Buddha said there's always a cause. And that cause is clinging. So the heart wanting something that it doesn't have, us looking for something that's not here, or misunderstanding something about life, right? That's clinging. When we want something we don't have, when we don't want what we have, right? We want things to be different. And in the third noble truth, the Buddha says is hopeful, right? The first two are like, reality checks. But the third one is like, there's a way to be free, right? Good news, right? When we learn to be brave and connect with life as it is, we start to, our understanding deepens, right? We use the teachings, we use the Buddha's wisdom to help us understand life as it is. And wisdom itself is what's liberative. It's what's freeing for us, right? And so there's a little one at the door that might need something, Lisa. So there is suffering as a cause. There's a way to freedom. And then the fourth noble truth, the Buddha laid out the Noble Eightfold Path. He's like, here it is, friends. This is what I've learned in my own experience. These 8 path factors, this is the way to freedom, right? There are only 8. But in those 8, they include all of the teachings, and they transcend all of life, right? So there's nothing we're going to experience that's outside of what the Noble Eightfold Path can handle. So that's good. And the path begins and ends with wisdom, because we need a little bit of wisdom to get started, right? That inquiry that led the Buddha out of the path, the Bodhisattva out of the path, out of the palace. Right? There's a little bit of like curiosity. I don't understand this, that I can have so much privilege and still not have an internal sense of happiness, right? What is that? And so that curiosity for each of us is really important, right? It helps us to seek something that's going to be beneficial, right? And it's also that wisdom is also the end of the path, because as we continue on and on and on, that wisdom just gets strengthened by our own sincerity, right? Our own curiosity. And so leading to the ultimate freedom, which is nibbana. Right? And so wisdom, there are 2 pieces of the path, 2 path factors that start us off. Wise view and wise intention. And then the middle third of the path is all about relationality. So 3 path factors about how we live and how we harmonize, right? Sometimes the word harmony doesn't quite land with me because it can evoke this sense of a false sense of peace, like a passivity, right? But harmonizing is like a going towards, just continuing, seeking something, right? It's something that we do, and we learn how to repair, and we learn how to be courageous, and we learn how to engage, and we just keep doing this, and that's how we find our way to harmonizing, right? So the middle third of the path is all about relationality, wise speech, wise action, and wise livelihood. And then the third part of the path is about settledness of mind, like what we do when we're on the cushion, when we come to common ground like this and sit for half an hour. Wise effort, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. Well, if we only did this, if we only came and sat for half an hour, we'd be in trouble, because we then leave here and we go live like regular people who are making a lot of mistakes in our lives. And then we go to sit down, and all we're doing is like we're being flooded by our own bad behavior, right? So these go together. The ethical part of the path, the relational part of the path, how we're living, impacts the quality of our settledness when we sit down. And the quality of our settledness then supports a deepening understanding that keeps us going, right? You see how the path kind of works together. So with these, getting there to wise intention before I run out of time. Wise intention, the second path factor, is really, for me, like a very accessible teaching. So much of the we have to start where we are. Sometimes like scratch my head about this one, like I don't quite know. But we always start where we are, right? So in this teaching on wise intention, what the Buddha's really saying is that all of the ways that we engage, all of our thoughts, all of our words, all of our actions matter. They benefit something. And so when we cultivate the kind of intentions that support a life that we want to have, then we see that happening in front of us. And when we aren't mindful of intentions, when we misunderstand that every moment it matters the quality of our hearts and minds as we're engaging in the world. When we misunderstand that, then we have no idea what seeds we're planting in our lives and in the world, right? So I love this teaching because it's so practical. And you don't have to have perfect concentration or perfect wisdom to actually do this day in and day out, right? We can, if we think about our intentions like values, they're always renewing for us. Right? We can get up in the morning and think like, I really just want to be a decent human being today. I'm going to do my best to be kind to my children. I'm going to smile at the people I see on the bus. I'm going to just be diligent when I get to work, and I'm going to see if I can go home in a peaceful place, right? Like those are decent intentions to have. We might call those mundane intentions. Are just ordinary, right? And we can reset those as many times in the day. And we can be really sincere about that. Like I'll get in my car sometimes when I remember, often, and I won't like bring to mind an intention that I think I should have. I'll just like look at my heart and see like, sweetie, before you step on the gas here, what kind of a driver do you want to be? What kind of a driver do you want to be? And I'll go like, I just don't want to be I don't want to be a jackass, I just want to be a decent driver on the road. I don't want to be full of anger. I don't want to, I just want to know like traffic is every single day on my way to work, there's always traffic. Why resist that? I'm just going to see about this. I'm going to like cultivate the intention just to be a decent human being while I'm driving. And that feels like a very useful thing to do, right? And then in some moments, it's also useful to bring to mind like some deep intentions. Like intentions that are about some of the deepest truths. Like, like I know something, like what the Buddha said is that in every moment of consciousness, there's an associated intention in the heart, right? And that we can't have both intentions of goodwill and ill will at the same time. And I understand something about this, that when the heart is full of goodwill, it's hard to be a hateful human being, right? And so because I trust the Buddhist teachings here that every moment matters, every moment of consciousness there's an intention, I know because I care about the world and I care about my life that I don't want to add ill will to an existing suffering world, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to add more hate. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time, but I know that much. I don't want to add more hate. So that's a deeper kind of truth, right? And so we might see how that guides and shapes our lives, how it guides and shapes our day. Like, does it actually support harmonizing in ways that we want to? Does it actually support us being the human beings that we want to? Like, we have to believe on some level, we have to hold two things always. One is that experience is nature, right? This is a deep reality. That everything we can experience is a result of causes and conditions. It's not self. It's not our fault. It's just this, right? And we have to also hold this reality that we can shape our experience. We don't have perfect control, but we do have some agency, right? And so when we understand that we have some agency, then it can help us reset our intentions and moments, because we know, like, wow, we can see cause and effect happen in real time, right? Well, like when my heart is full of hatred, I'm not careful when I'm doing my daily activities. I'm not very patient with my dog. I might misperceive what my wife is saying to me because it's all that she's saying is filtered through this lens of agitation and irritation, and that's not fair to her, it's not fair to me, right? So, but when my heart is full of good intentions, of goodwill, if you will, of goodwill, then things work differently. I can see that in real time, right? It doesn't actually damage my relationships to have a heart that's full of goodwill. Sometimes Buddhism can get a bad rap, like all we're doing is sitting and imagining a life of peace and not actually doing anything about it. But this is a way we can check it out in real time, because that's a misunderstanding. Remember, a third of the path is about relationality. And so we're inviting, and we're remembering that our intentions then support how we live, right? Our intentions then support how we talk, how we act, and how we live, right? And we can check this out in real time. What is it like? Does it matter that I'm internally agitated and I try to pretend that I'm not? Does that matter, right? Does that help me or hurt me? Because I know the truth, right? Unless I'm really in denial, I usually know the truth. That, yeah, there's something going on inside of me, and I'm trying not to let other people know. Instead, I wonder if I can make a different move, and that is apply the intention of goodwill right to this heart that's a little bit agitated, right? Because now I'm reorienting myself on a path and towards making effort for the benefit of all beings, right? So the Buddha said that there are three kinds of wise intention. And this word wise, this Pali word is sama, and it can be translated many different ways. Some often wise or right, and other words work too, like aligned works or complete works. And when I think of aligned, I like the word aligned, I like the word complete, although the other words work because there's an understanding of how they're used. But these words all point to how with each of the path factors, the word wise or the word sama precedes the path factor, right? Wise intention, wise view, wise action, wise effort. And because it aligns with the deepest truths of reality, right? It aligns with something that's hard to see, something that's often invisible to us, right? So in this, when we think about wise intention or complete intention or aligned intention, we might also consider how we don't always see the benefits of our actions immediately, but we can trust that there's some residue or some legacy that our intentions leave behind, right? Just like there's some legacy that our actions leave behind. We can see that a little more clearly. We don't always see how our intentions leave behind a legacy. But an alignment rests in that truth. So 3 wise intentions, or 3 complete or aligned intentions, whatever word you choose. And the first one is the intention of renunciation. The second one is intention of goodwill. And the third intention is an intention of harmlessness. Right? These are what the Buddha said are the 3 wise intentions. And the first one, intention of renunciation, I like to think about that to mean an intention to be simple. It may feel like life is complex, and in many ways we can make a case for that, right? But the simplicity of our being, our ability to be present and to be here, right? And to feel into the movement of life right here in the body as the body, like this is it, right? This is how we know our experience, right here in and with the body. And often we are really all up in our thoughts, right? We're all up in the proliferations we're thinking about imagining life, and we totally forget that life happens right here, right? And so a way to be simple, a way to practice wise renunciation is just to remember, like, how simple can my life be while I'm going about doing all the things I have to do today? Right? How simple can I be? Can I really be present with my children, with the person who's right in front of me? Can I feel the breath in my body? Can I tune in to the agitation when it arises? Can I feel the heart's goodness when it's there too? And trust that. Like, oh, this heart has the capacity for goodness. I'm seeing it because it's arising right now. I'm delighting with joy. I was just in there as the children and the teens arrived today at Common Ground. It's so joyful to me to see young people coming to the center, right? And the happy adults who are ready to receive them. It's so nice, yeah. So there was just this mudita, this capacity of the heart to be delighted in the goodness of others, right? So the intention of renunciation, and this counters the intention of desire. So just that constant seeking for something to be better, right? To want something more than this intention to be simple, then counters that intention just to want and want and want, right? So the second one, the intention of goodwill, often, teachers, it's here where we'll start to practice metta or loving kindness, or any of the flavors of loving kindness, right? The chant that we did this morning is one way of inviting this intention into the heart. Like, I don't know what's going to happen after this, but for now, I'm going to cultivate this intention of goodwill, right? And I'm going to trust goodness, that it has an impact on the heart, and it will have an impact. It will naturally spill out of us too. So the intention of goodwill counters the intention of ill will. So we can think about goodwill as just simple kindness, right? What does it mean to be kind? What does it mean to feel kindness, right? To really feel that movement of love or generosity or patience move through the heart. And then the third intention is an intention of harmlessness, right? And this counters the intention to be harmful, right? And this is where we remember our ethics, the ethics that we agree to. We can take up the precepts, the training on just these 5 practices of creating a kind of container for ourselves where we become trustworthy to each other, right? And these are all tricky, just like the precepts are tricky. We will find all kinds of justifications for any of the unwise intentions. Our heart will go like, well, this deserves my ill will because it's despicable, right? But then we get to ask, well, does it help me respond or participate in useful ways? Like, is there any downside to engagement when the heart is full of ill will? Does my engagement, even with something that's very challenging right in front of me, does it require a heart that's full of ill will? And that's for us to go check out, right? I do some work in schools still, and often have difficult conversations, sometimes with kids, sometimes with parents. And it's not always what the person I'm talking to wants to hear, and I know that. Sometimes I'll go into the conversation, I'll go like, oh, this is going to be hard. I'm going to deliver some news that nobody wants to hear right now. And I'll just before I have that conversation with a student or a parent, I'll just bring to mind this intention, a kind intention, I want to see if I can do this with the most kindness. I want to see if I can be courageous and do this with the most kindness, right? Even though it may not be easy to hear. And I want to cultivate an intention to do no harm, even though that's a tall order, right? And so even when the conversation goes sideways, because it's not easy, what I find more often is that on the back end, there's just a real heart, a heart that really cares about the human experience. It is hard to be a human being. It's hard to receive information that we don't want. It's hard to accept things that aren't going our way. It's hard to repair relationships when they feel like they've been disrupted, right? And yet that intention to do no harm then allows me to really remember to be in relationship. I'm always in a relationship. I'm always in a relationship. So when I'm walking down the hallway and a student gives me the side eye, or doesn't want to see me the next time, I'm I feel like I can handle that, right? Because I really don't want to do harm here, and I care. So I've already cultivated this heart that cares, and this heart that cares about doing no harm, right? And so that allows me to just persevere in really good and useful ways. And hopefully we see this all the time, right? Especially when the stakes are high in our intimate relationships and in our families, and even in a place like Common Ground, right? We go, oh, this isn't really it's not perfect here in this relationship, in this community, in this family. And yet I have an investment in participating skillfully. And we get to practice doing that, right? We get to practice returning to relationship, returning to kindness, returning to this intention to do no harm, right? I love that about a spiritual community, because we can show up and we can try to be our best selves, and we mess up all the time. But we're a community of practitioners, right? We're practicing what it's like to be renewing in our intentions. Let me see if I can find this quote by Bhikkhu Bodhi that I like a lot. Yeah, here it is. It just speaks to the impact of practicing with wise intention. He uses the word right, so I'm going to just use that word. Right intention claims the second place in the path between right view and the triad of moral factors that begins with right speech, because the mind's intentional function forms the crucial link connecting our cognitive perspective with our modes of active engagement in the world. On the one side, actions always point back to the thoughts with which they spring. Thought is the forerunner of action, directing body and speech, stirring them into activity, using them as instruments for expressing its aims and ideals. These aims and ideals, our intentions, in turn point back a further step to the prevailing views. When wrong view prevails, the outcome is wrong intention, giving rise to unwholesome actions. Thus, one who denies the moral efficacy of action and measures achievement in terms of gain and status will aspire to nothing but gain and status, using whatever means they can do to acquire them. When such pursuits become widespread, the result is suffering, the tremendous suffering of individuals, social groups, and nations out to gain wealth, position, and power without regard for consequences. The cause for the endless competition, conflict, injustice, and oppression does not lie outside the mind. These are all just manifestations of intentions, outcroppings of thoughts driven by greed, hatred, and delusion. Oof, right? So if we need any support, to cultivate good, wise intentions, we see like, oh yeah, it really matters. It really matters what kind of intentions we're cultivating here. And this idea that cultivating wise intention can be renewing is really important, because it's not about repressing some desire or aversion in the heart, right? When that's what's motivating the heart, then we want to be able to feel that, right? Because of the First Noble Truth, this really pragmatic statement, oh, suffering exists. I don't have to somehow be a perfect person or pretend that I'm a perfect person. I can just feel this movement of heart right now, this movement of desire, this movement of aversion, and bring the intention to be kind right here, right? Just this intention to be kind. And see how that supports our participation with this experience that we're having. It's noble to set off on this training, right? Because we come in contact with everything that we don't want, but it has, I have the most gratitude for finding the teachings. I don't really, in some moments I like, nothing really feels better suited to support where we are in our collective journey here. So the nobility of setting up on training is that it's hard, right? It's really hard. And it will require us to see things about ourselves and our minds that we don't really want to see, and each other that we don't really want to see. So that reframing of, that suffering is this pragmatic view of suffering, that it's just like this, right? And remembering the power of Bhikkhu Bodhi's words, like, oh, this is the way the world is, right? This is why the world is like this, right? Because of how greed, delusion, and hatred just run amok when we're not paying attention. So when we remember that we have some agency in how we shape our lives, it's really good. Even though it's not, it's really good to just see the impact of our kindness, of our own good intentions in a moment. Like, oh, this does create a world that I want to be in, right? And I'm a part of that. I'm doing that right now. I am participating in this community, however, a community of 1, a community of 3, right? A community of 5,000 here at Common Ground. I'm participating in this community because I can see the results of my wise participation here. So I think that's what I wanted to share this morning. Thanks for listening, friends. I thought I saw little heads over there, but I could be wrong, Lisa. You would go check? And in the meantime, we'll see if there are any questions and comments. I'll start with the room here. Anything goes too, contentions. You're like, I don't know about that, right? Yeah, Carrie. I'll repeat it for you Zoomers too.
This is maybe more of a reflection, but this is perfect timing, because just this morning and yesterday I was thinking about, I really need to have love as more of the foreground of intentions, or just moving forward with love. But I found this morning, forming a text, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and bring up love. I'm going to try and text with love. And then it was it was difficult. I kept thinking, well, is that the most loving thing to say? Or is that the most loving thing to say? And then I found maybe it's easier for me to see what is my intention, just going in raw and noticing what is already there, and then working with that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Carrie was just making this really wise comment about going into sending a text message and wanting to be loving, and then finding maybe some doubt in the mind, well, is this loving or is that loving? And then deciding to maybe scrap the intention to be loving and just tune into the heart and see what's here. Yeah? Does that sound right? Yeah, Yeah, sometimes the thinking mind will want to take over in moments like that, and we'll be spinning in doubt. Well, should I say this? Should I say that? And then it can be wise to just go back and just feel into what's actually here right now, because I'm trying to be perfect. And let's see what's actually here. Is there a way to honor this? Right? And we can see if that honoring then gives rise to something that we can just go with, right? Without too much discernment. With some discernment, right? And especially if when we tune into the heart, if we realize, well, the heart isn't really feeling very loving right now. Because that might happen, right? We're trying to be loving, we'll realize like, oof, it's not the right time. And maybe set down the text message for a bit if we can. And sometimes we're in the middle of a conversation and it's hard to do that. It's hard to set it aside, right? We have to still keep going in the conversation, or I've been in these positions too, and I'll notice like, oof, there's something moving in the heart, and and it just leads me to proceed with the most care, right? Because I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that my intentions are mixed. So I'm going to be maybe a little more sparse with words. I'm going to see if it's possible to direct a little bit of compassion right here to the heart that's on fire. I'm going to see if that supports the next movement, right? Because it's true that in most of the time our intentions are mixed, right? That is true for human beings, right? If you've noticed your own intentions, you'll see that too. And it's also true what the Buddha said, that we can't have a heart that's full of goodwill at the same time that we're having a heart that's full of hate, right? So if we notice and we lean into the heart that cares about it, like we notice there's some ill will here, and the heart really cares about that, now we're righting ourselves on the path, right? Now we're making wise effort to cultivate, to strengthen, to maybe bring into the foreground this heart that cares right now, so that we're helping the heart abide in that goodwill as we proceed. Yeah. Thanks. There's a question from Zoom, on Zoom, Jenny, here. Hold on, Jenny, let me see if I can make it so people can hear you. Okay, go ahead and start talking, Jenny, and we'll see if...
So, can you hear me? Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to tell you how amazingly grateful I am this morning, because yesterday I recognized that I was in a very difficult situation, and hearing you say having courage was such a great remembering for me. Instead of getting angry, I withdraw and I shut down in a difficult situation. And just yesterday, I laid something out and I did the best I could. And it was keeping in mind the loving kindness practice, kindness to myself and kindness to the other person. And so it's kind of a flip. I tend to withdraw in fear instead of get angry. And so this talk was just absolutely perfect for me today, considering that I did just that yesterday. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jenny. Yeah. Yeah, hold on one second. Let me adjust the... There we go.
Well, I hope there are more questions, or we're going to have to sing by ourselves, because the kids, I think, went to the park and they must have...
Okay, so we'll take one more question. So if on Zoom you didn't hear that, the kids are having so much fun at the park they didn't come back to sing. Okay, we'll take one more question back here.
My question is about intention in regards to anger. So understanding that when we experience anger in our body, that how do we meet that intention and not shut the anger down, in like a repressive way?
Yeah.
How do we meet these intentions that don't center around kindness with a different, how do we encounter them?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we meet anger with kindness? so that we're not just repressing anger? Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll keep it succinct now because we're at about time. But any intention to be kind is then cultivating kindness, even if what we're noticing is anger, right? So we're still cultivating a kind heart, a compassionate heart that responds to this, right? Yeah, thanks. Great question. All right, friends. Let's see, small groups. Let me change this. Yeah, Lucy is going to do that. Fantastic. So I'm going to say goodbye now to the Zoomers, and I'll help you in the room. All right, take good care, friends.